Before Lars Ulrich became the drummer behind one of the biggest names in heavy metal, his future looked surprisingly different. Growing up in Denmark, he was surrounded by professional tennis through his father, Torben Ulrich. For a young Lars, sport was expected to be the main path. But music kept pulling him in another direction. What made a teenager choose drums over a promising athletic future? And how did that decision eventually help create a band that would reshape modern metal? The answer begins with a move across the Atlantic, a growing obsession with rock music, and a young musician who understood that sometimes the most important part of a band is not simply playing an instrument. It is bringing people together around an idea. Lars Ulrich was born in Gentofte, Denmark, in 1963. His father was a successful tennis player, and Lars spent much of his early life around the sport. But during his teenage years, his attention increasingly shifted toward music. Records from major rock and metal artists became a source of inspiration, and the drums started to feel like a natural fit. When his family moved to California, Lars found himself much closer to the American music scene he had been studying from a distance. He began searching for other musicians who shared his interests. Then, in 1981, a simple advertisement helped change his life. That advertisement connected Lars with a young guitarist named James Hetfield. At first, there was no guarantee that the partnership would become anything significant. But the two musicians shared an ambitious vision. They wanted something faster, heavier, and more intense than much of what was dominating mainstream rock at the time. What happened next changed everything. Metallica began taking shape, and Lars became more than its drummer. He became one of the people helping organize the band's direction. His approach was not built around flashy technique alone. Instead, he focused heavily on arrangement, timing, song structure, and the overall momentum of a track. That became one of his most recognizable strengths. As Metallica developed, Lars helped turn complex musical ideas into songs that could connect with huge audiences. Albums such as Master of Puppets and Justice for All and Metallica demonstrated how powerful that combination could become. His drumming helped create the movement behind songs that became landmarks of metal, while his role in shaping arrangements gave the band a distinctive identity. But Lars was always thinking beyond the drum kit. He understood that Metallica was becoming something larger than a group of musicians playing on stage. The band was developing an international audience, a visual identity, and a long-term cultural presence. As Metallica reached a new level of success in the 1990s, the band sound also began changing. The group explored different arrangements, production choices, and songwriting approaches. Not every decision was universally understood, but that willingness to experiment became part of the band's story. Few people noticed how much Lars was involved in pushing Metallica forward during these periods. Then came one of the defining moments of his public career, the rise of digital music and the debate surrounding Napster in the early 2000s. Lars became one of the most visible musicians arguing that artists should have greater control over how their recorded work was distributed online. Whatever opinion people had about that moment, it showed something important about Ulrich's personality. He was willing to step beyond the role of drummer and speak directly about the future of the music business. That willingness to challenge the expected role of a musician has remained part of his identity. Over the decades, Lars has continued evolving with Metallica. His playing, songwriting contributions, business instincts, and visual presence have all become connected to the band's larger story. He may not be remembered as the most technically traditional drummer in metal, and that is precisely what makes his career interesting. Lars Ulrich built his reputation around feel, structure, energy, and an ability to understand the bigger picture. His legacy is therefore much larger than the beats heard on Metallica's records. He represents the idea that a musician can influence a band in many different ways. Sometimes it happens through an instrument, sometimes through songwriting, sometimes through vision, persistence, or simply recognizing an opportunity before anyone else sees its potential. From a teenager surrounded by tennis courts in Denmark to a central figure in one of rock's most influential bands, Lars Ulrich followed a path few could have predicted. And perhaps the most important part of his story is that he never became successful by following a traditional blueprint. He helped create the blueprint himself. That is what ultimately changed everything.